Kaveh, you are a fellow at the Macdonald-Laurier Institute. You are a lawyer, and you've also worked with a number of the families of victims. What can you tell me about the work that you're doing, and what do you want us to know about their stories and their experiences dealing with the fallout of the murder of their loved ones?
Thanks, Christine. It's good to be back on your show. The stories that I hear from the families are truly heartbreaking. I mean, these are people that have had their nearest and dearest taken from them so senselessly. And not only were they taken, but the Iranian regime continued to lie about it, continued to cover it up, continues to this day to cover it up. And unfortunately, the government that should be standing up for them, the government of Canada, has been putting up roadblocks. You were speaking with Mr. Honickman before. That was just one example of it. It's the Canadian government has said all the right things, but as far as the families are concerned, they haven't done the right things. They haven't necessarily been allies in this fight the way they should have been.
Now, the Iranian government has said that this was a human error, and they've actually criminally charged a number of people that they say they're holding responsible. What's your reaction to those charges, and what weight should we give to that?
We should give next to no weight to the proceedings that occurred in Iran, and the Association of Families of PS 752 have also come out with a statement saying they dismiss it entirely. The Iranian regime went after a handful of very low-level figures in the Iranian civil aviation organization, put them on trial without even really consulting with the families. The higher-ups, the people that actually ordered the shooting, they remain at large, and they continue to stonewall this investigation.
Let's talk about the compensation for victims. I know that some money was promised by the Canadian government to victims as well as by the Iranian government. What can you tell me about that?
So, in speaking with the families, the issue of compensation often comes up, the issue of justice comes up, and what they always say is, we're not seeking compensation. Obviously, that's something to think about down the road, but what we want is justice and we want truth. So first and foremost, they want to know what happened, who ordered the shooting, why was it ordered? And secondly, they want the people that were responsible for this shooting to be held responsible and to face charges and be brought before a court. So the compensation that has been promised, by Iran, it's negligible. It doesn't mean very much. I'm not quite sure what the status is with the Canadian government, but really, the vast majority of the families, this is really the least of their concerns.
Now, the Canadian government, as I said in the opening, the minister at the time has said that this was more than human error. The government has committed to an investigation that doesn't seem to have been pursued. What do you think is happening? Why is the government of Canada not standing up for the Canadian citizens who were murdered by a foreign government in a violent and hostile act?
So first of all, I'm really glad that you framed the question that way. These are Canadian citizens. People often think of this PS 752 story as a foreign affairs story. It is not. It's a story of Canadians that were brutally shot without any reason by a foreign state. In terms of why the Canadian government has not taken a hard enough line on this, I don't know. I mean, this is something that frustrates me, and I know frustrates a lot of families as well. The government says all the right things, but I think their approach to date has been, and I think this is something that is pervasive in a lot of our thinking about Iran and Iran's regime generally, is that, this is a regime that you can sit down and negotiate with reasonably. And I think the Canadian government has done that, tried to negotiate. And time and again, it has just hit a wall, and it has had to come out and say, these negotiations are going nowhere. I'm happy that this case is likely going to go before the International Court of Justice, but there's much more that the Canadian government could have done and could have done earlier.
Yeah, so the International Court of Justice, which is separate from another institution people might be familiar with, which is the International Criminal Court, and we've got to go to the next segment, but there has been some debate over this question over whether or not the shooting down of the plane was intentional, because I know that there was a heightened level of conflict, especially between the United States and Iran, leading up to the shooting down of this plane. So this is a really important question, the intentionality, and that will speak to whether or not this constituted a war crime or if it was merely an accident. And the two procedures under the two different courts, the Court of Justice, International Court of Justice versus International Criminal Court, will be very different.